have had a good time watching this one, right? I say that because you love montages. You're just so good for montages. And this movie has like 17 montages in it.
You know what? Montages make me super happy. On the very first page of my notes, I wrote down montage of fights. Yes.
There you go. It was more montage than regular scenes.
I definitely gave it credit for its montages. And maybe this is part of where like my love for montages started, was action movies from this time. So I don't actually remember watching Bloodsport all the way through. I of course remember scenes or pieces from it, but I don't have a clear recollection of watching the full thing before.
That's surprising to me a little bit. It's one of those movies that was always on TV. And so I don't think I ever saw it start to finish until years after it first came out. But I remember seeing, like, you'd always see bits and pieces. It'd be like, anytime you see Jean Claude Van Damme with no shirt on, roundhouse kicking somebody in a fight pit, it's just like, oh yeah, Bloodsport. There we go.
Yeah, and I got all the Bloodsport references growing up. I knew because it pops into popular culture quite a bit. And I definitely knew and had recollections of it similar to you. I think it was just something where I'd seen pieces on TV, but never sat down. And that sort of surprised me because I was a huge kind of Kung Fu fan. I'm not the sort of movie buff of the two of us here, but I loved Kung Fu movies. Like I watched a lot. I have all the Bruce Lee movies on DVD, and like I was into those genres. I love the silly like 2000s Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon kind of Kung Fu action stuff too. So I don't know why I don't remember this more.
Anything with kicks. You like movies with kicking.
I love kicking.
There you go. Yeah, it's perfect. Welcome back to Bad Movies and Beer. We are returning from our mid-season break, and it felt longer than it was. I feel I missed sitting down here to record.
I definitely missed it a lot. I'm really happy to be back. I wanted to throw a thank you to all of the people who have listened. We had a lot of family and friends sort of support us and share some feedback, and then lots of people we didn't know.
Yeah, we've made some new friends actually through the podcast happening, and we've got for the second half of our first season, we've had a couple of requests for episodes, so we're gonna have a couple of social media follower requests for episodes coming up. We got a lot of good stuff planned.
Yeah, I'm excited to do those. I'm really happy to be sort of going for some of the fan requests. That's going to be really enjoyable.
Well, and our bonus episode that we put out during our break was like a request from someone who actually made a movie and asked us to review it, and we're like, absolutely.
Yeah, love that idea. Really appreciate that request to watch that movie and to create an episode on it. If anyone else has more of those, please do throw them our way.
Yeah, we're not afraid to take a look at whatever you guys have to offer. So really appreciate that. And again, thanks to everyone who has followed us on Twitter and Instagram and who's listened to the podcast. We really appreciate you, and we look forward to putting out some more good content for you. Starting with
Bloodsport. Woo! I'm so excited.
Kumite.
JCVD, the muscles from Brussels.
Oh man, alive. Yes. That dude. He just burst on the scene, and this is kind of the movie that did it. Like I think Kickboxer was before this. This could be another the things I was wrong about, but I'm pretty sure Kickboxer came first. But Bloodsport is the one that really drove it home for me.
Yeah, I remember very clearly some of his movies growing up. For me, this isn't the one that sticks out. I had this huge love of Cyborg, the sort of cyberpunk post-apocalyptic kung fu movie that he's a part of. So maybe one day we'll get a chance to do that one. That was one of my favorites for sure.
That's pretty bad.
Oh, it's awful.
That's a pretty bad movie.
It would deserve to be on our podcast for sure.
I think so.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are maybe tuning in for the first time, or if it's been so long that you've forgotten the way this works, we watch the movie. We talk about the movie. We drink a beer that kind of relates to the movie in some way, shape, or form. And today, our beer that we are drinking, I think, relates to it quite a bit.
Yeah, this is awesome. It's called Bloodvar, and the text on it even looks like the title for Bloodsport on the DVD, which is sweet. And this is from a Toronto craft brewery called Blood Brothers. They are one of my favorites. Recently, we've been able to order a lot more beer from craft breweries, and Blood Brothers has been one that I've been going back to the well over and over again with some of their incredible beers.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite places too. Great spot in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And like you said, the font just looks like the Bloodsport font. I'm excited to get into this, man. We should crack these open.
Yeah, it's called a Pilsner-ish beer. So it's some sort of Pilsner-style lager, and we'll see what it tastes like. Ooh, little spray, but nothing major. Cooper's having a little malfunction here. Oh, he's got it.
Good Lord, that took a while. All right, so we open with the first of many montages. We're right into it for you.
Yeah, we get like this sort of pan into a city, some sort of stereotypical Asian music.
We got construction. They're building the fight pit for the Kumite.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of fight training from random dudes who some of them aren't even important.
So yeah, there were lots of these. I actually paused several times so I could sort of take a note on who the fighters were going to be. I also wanted to mention that very quickly we got our first introduction of what I call the Phil Collins drums.
Okay, yeah.
And the musical notes are so on the tone. There's probably a better way to describe those. I know Phil Collins didn't create
Oh, it's
those,
in the air today, but that's what everyone thinks of it.
That's exactly what it sounds like to me. But yeah, we get that sweet montage of all the fighters. I'm super excited.
I like their different training methods. Some of them are sparring. One dude is smashing ice blocks. They're smashing boards. That one guy is busting coconuts. Like he's chopping coconuts with his bare hands.
Climb trees to get to it too. His fighting style confused me a lot, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more. I also wondered if it was problematic.
I was trying to think of a way to to describe the fighting style, and I couldn't think of one that wouldn't sound racist.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
we're just not going to. We can mention
style.
it, but we're going to talk about its unique fighting style. The one was really weird to me. The training was like on a beach island. I called it Island Fight Club, but I didn't really understand what was happening.
The one that confused me because he never shows up again. There's like some rich dude. He seems like super rich. He's got like some mansion. He's like a butler. We get the impression that he's going to be someone important. He just never shows up again. Like half these guys, we see them for like little snippets later on in different montages.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they just needed to make those montages look more representative of all the possible tough guys.
I guess. Now we do get a closer introduction to a couple of characters, including Jackson, the large, burly, bearded guy who eventually becomes friends with Jean Claude Van Damme. And in his little scene here, he fires off a couple of great just action movie cliches.
I love anything with full contact. Need a few more scars on my face.
It's just like generic tough guy talk.
I think I termed him Ray, right? His first name's Ray?
I think so.
Yeah, so I think someone mentions to him that they heard he can get killed, and he goes, only if you up. And I thought that was really
what a
good,
meathead. Oh.
He had a beer in his hand 95% of the time he was on screen, which was
he's
pretty
a fun-loving guy.
Typical, like, American.
Yeah, definitely.
I love the way they ended the montage. The lights go out on the ring. Like, I just thought that was perfect, right? They finished prepping it. It was clean, and it just shoots down. I was hyped after that montage. I was ready for Bloodsport.
Well, and it doesn't take long to get into it. Now, before we leave for the Kumite, we introduce Captain Frank Dux, who is, of course, Jean Claude Van Damme. And we gather he's in the army and that they don't want him going to the Kumite. So he slips out, and before he takes off to go to Hong Kong, he goes and visits his old mentor. And now we get these flashbacks. Holy Lord.
Okay, before we get into the flashback, I was confused at very first when he started talking. Because I know he's from Brussels, right? And I think so English isn't his first language, but it made it sound to me right when it started that he was trying to speak in an American accent.
If he is trying to do an accent, he's doing a terrible job.
Well, I was going to shit all over him. Like, that was my plan right now until they changed it, because that accent really was just a mix of his and what he thought or sounded like an American accent was. It was.
Well, now, but speaking of accents, in the flashback, we get three kids breaking into a house to steal like a sword.
Oh, God.
And the kid who plays young Jean Claude Van Damme, I don't know what accent he's speaking with. It's terrible. He's so bad. He's terrible.
You can't even understand him.
He's like, so bad that I was actually kind of like, for a second, I had to be like, is there something wrong with him? Because he's so bad. He's the worst actor I've ever seen in my life.
It did seem like he had a speech impediment. And I mean, maybe it was... No, I'm not even going to make a joke from it because it is just really bad acting. He was horrible. And then when they go to the flashback with the other little kid.
Well, he ends up, the owner catches them trying to steal this sword. The other two kids run off. Young Jean Claude Van Damme just stays there. And the owner tells him that you can't steal a katana. Okay, you have to earn it. Young Jean Claude Van Damme says he wasn't going to steal it, which is complete horseshit. And the guy cuts off the brim of his hat. Now, young Jean Claude Van Damme doesn't flinch, which the owner takes to mean that he's got fighting spirit. But I think it means that he's just too dumb and scared to react.
It was pretty funny. I think the actor tried to portray an internal struggle on whether he should take that sword or not. Clearly, he was going with some kids that he was trying to fit in with. We learned that he's a new kid to the school and he's trying to fit in by going to steal this sword, and he was really struggling with that sense of whether he should steal it or not.
You read a lot more from his completely blank facial expression than I did. Anyway, the owner spares him and decides to bring him in to train with his son. And God, these scenes are just awful. He
Yeah.
rescues the kid from some bullies. Is this what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, there's this bullying scene where the person he was trying to steal from, his son, is getting beat up at school, and the JCVD Jr. breaks up that fight, and both the way that he breaks it up and then sort of the way that they kind of like agree to be friends and look out for each other is incredibly bad. It's worse than like a kindergarten performance.
The acting's terrible. The choreography is terrible. These do not look like realistic kicks or punches from any of these kids.
It looks like it was filmed on a super cheap phone, but we know that mobile phones are like
No,
cell phones didn't exist back then. It was just really, really poorly done.
Terrible.
Yeah,
it's really bad.
This is probably the worst section of the movie
Oh my God, by a hot mile. Are you kidding me?
Shot. And I don't know why it was so bad. Like,
I know why.
understand.
It's because young Jean Claude Van Damme is horrendous.
I'm trying not to throw out the worst acting performance I've ever seen
It is
because
the worst
I've said
acting
it so many
performance
times.
that I've ever seen. And like, we always throw this out there, but like, he's got to be someone's kid, right? They must have been like, no, they has to be. Somebody must have been like,
I nearly spit took my beer all over there, but you're right. That has to be a relative of someone on set. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hired this
I
guy.
cannot believe they would have held auditions and seen that kid and be like, he's the one.
Does he actually have like an accent from Brussels or something? Maybe they picked the only kid from Belgium in America that could do that role. I don't want to laugh at that.
That's why he's terrible.
So we got to make fun of his acting. We can't make fun of.
Well, I would. That's not going to be hard to do because his acting is atrocious. The son of the owner who they're trying to steal the sword from tells young Jean Claude Van Damme that someday he'll fight in the Kumite and make his father proud. But as we find out later on, the son actually ends up dying. He passes away. We don't really find out how.
Yeah,
but
I was really confused. So very quickly we transfer from this like horrible childhood acting to when they're older, right? They're sort of older teenagers or young adults. And we don't get any explanation of why the son is dead. It like sort of just clips to like a memorial of the dead son.
And then we cut to after the memorial, where a slightly less young Jean-Claude Van Damme, he wants the training that I guess the son was going to receive from his father. He wants to do it to honor this guy's name is Tanaka and allow him to pass on the teaching. But Tanaka quickly shoots that down by telling him,
You are not Japanese. You are not a Tanaka.
He gets really dark too, right? He starts talking about a history of his family, and his family was killed in Hiroshima, and he's like the only one escapes, and that this is his second family here in America.
So he's now lost a second son.
Yeah, and so he will not train him because he's not Japanese, but
He does.
JCVD won't give up, right?
He won't
like
be denied.
yeah, so
He's got the fighting spirit.
so he agrees then to train JCVD, and we get another montage.
And can I just say, thank goodness we said goodbye to young Jean-Claude Van Damme, because that guy was a horrible anchor just dragging this whole movie down with his awful accent, his horrible acting, and his incredibly, incredibly severe case of dumb face, just dragging the whole thing down.
So this poor kid who's like, I don't know, maybe 12 or 14, you're just ragging on him so hard. I wonder if he ever made a
my
movie
God.
before. You got to IMDb this guy later and see.
I know he didn't make a movie afterwards. Who would have watched this and been like, let's hire this guy? God, he's so bad.
All right, so they get into it. He accepts to train him, and they get into our first training montage here.
And this is just him getting his ass kicked the whole time. But there's also a couple of cutscenes where like doing that thing where like you mirror somebody else's movements. So they're sitting there cross-legged, and like Tanaka's like moving his hands. And
The
Van Damme's
Karate
moving his
Kid
hands.
kind of training
Yeah.
stuff that we see in there. Yeah, he is just getting pummeled. And it is
Oh
a
my
long
God.
montage. Like, I call
It
it a
is.
montage, but this is like 5 to 7 minutes of runtime where Jean-Claude is just getting f***ed up.
We also get a lot of blindfold work in this scene, which ends up being important for later. He's like serving some tea without like being able to see. And then at one point, Tanaka goes to try and chop him in the face, and he catches the chop even though he's blindfolded, because now his senses are heightened from this training, I
Yeah,
guess.
he's been getting his ass kicked for 7 minutes of montage time, which must be like months of real life time. I did also note that it turns into almost like fucking torture. He draw and quarters him.
Well, this is how this ends. Yeah, this montage ends with the old man, Jean-Claude Van Damme, is meditating, and the old man is just beating the shit out of him with the stick while he meditates. But then, yeah, like you said, they end up hanging him up. They've got a rope on each arm and each leg, and they're literally drawing and quartering him. But then the ropes snap, so I guess that means he passes? I don't really understand.
He meditated through the pain and controlled his body so that he could break the structure that was holding him there, that was drawing quartering him. So he got there. And then guess what happens?
He like knights him.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
Yeah, he sort of tells him he is worthy enough to now represent his family in the
Kumite.
Yeah. And we also have a lot of drums here. I had to write down the drums.
So many drums.
Yeah, In the Air Tonight was really blaring.
So now we end the flashback. He says goodbye to his mentor, who is much older. He's kind of in bad health now. This is their farewell.
What I noticed though was that when his master was laying in bed, they didn't age him at all.
No.
They tried to say he was older, but he looked like a 35-year-old man.
Hey man, you know what they say? Asian don't raisin. You've heard that before. That's a real saying. Just saying.
Oh boy.
He looks great.
I don't think that has anything to do with his lineage. I think that mostly has to do with bad movie making.
Oh, I disagree.
Yeah.
I think that they could have filmed this 20 years before and then filmed this scene in the present day. It's exactly the same.
Okay.
Guy looks great. Saw him the other day. It looks terrific.
Oh,
So we're off to Hong Kong. It's time for the Kumite. On a streetcar, he just immediately meets Jackson. Jackson's there hitting on a lady. And speaking of ladies, there's a reporter in town, and she is trying to find out about the Kumite. Now, before we get more information on her, we got a little video game showdown between Jackson and Jean Claude Van Damme. Of course, Jean Claude Van Damme wins, despite having absolutely zero experience. And they realize they're both in town for the Kumite.
You want to see some real fighting, you can see me fight at the Kumite.
I'm here too for the Kumite.
Aren't you a little young for full contact?
Aren't you a little old for video games?
And just like that, they're the best of friends.
Yeah. That was a pretty funny scene. It was funny watching them play an arcade game together.
An ancient one.
Yeah, throwing in some quarters. But that was like an early martial arts fighting one, and Jean-Claude clearly had the technique down. It was that moment when he said, "Aren't you a little young?" really hit me. Like I actually reflected on it a sec because I was always so young watching Jean Claude Van Damme movies that I never thought of him as a young man. But clearly he is, right? In this movie, he's at the very start of his career.
Oh my God, he's at least 10 years younger than we are now.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. But for some reason, I always picture Jean Claude as like a mature ass kicker.
He's got a face that just looks mature. He's got a man's face. He doesn't have a boy's face. He looks like a grown man. Not the kid who played him, of course, in the flashback scene. That kid looks like a what?
You won't let this poor kid go.
Oh God, he's the worst.
I mean, I shouldn't. I'm not going to judge you for your perspective because I've shit on lots of people in this podcast.
Yes, you have.
But I can't dig a grave for this kid anymore.
Back stateside, we've got the military police. They're looking for Frank Dux. They ask Mrs. Tanaka if he was headed to Hong Kong, but they already know the answer to that. She doesn't give them any information. They know. Why are they even there? Just shaking the tree? Come on.
We get a little Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah, that's right. He's one of the two military police officers.
I was a little surprised for a second.
He really doesn't do a lot in this. Back at the hotel in Hong Kong, Frank and Jackson meet Mr. Lin, who he will be, I guess, like their handler, and this guy has just a world-class mullet.
Oh, Victor is the best.
Dude, if there was a kumite for mullets, this guy would win, just hands down. He just run the table. He looks incredible.
He is great. He's hyping up the biggest kumite ever.
Yep.
He's got amazing mullet. He's
constantly wearing tracksuits.
And aviator sunglasses. It's just like, he is
God.
so good. And the energy in him. He has decided that this year's the year that a North American contender could do it.
Yeah, this is actually, you said it's the biggest kumite ever. And he tells them, protect your nuts, guys, because they're crossing into a particularly dangerous part of China. And sure enough, they travel down some real sketchy alleys to the same door we saw actually in the beginning during the construction montage. This is the arena where the kumite will be happening.
Yeah, I like this part. It was interesting because this is being held in Hong Kong. Like it's all takes place in Hong Kong, but in the alleys they take them, they sort of say this is the Chinese part of Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Right? Like not the British or like separate part of Hong Kong. And it was interesting to see that. They set a really good tone in here, and there's some really creepy like synth music as they're going through.
Yeah.
And these sort of hallways become a part of the plot later in the story too, which
they definitely do.
Yeah.
When they get in there, they have to show their invitations, and the people running the tournament do not believe that Jean Claude Van Damme is from the Tanaka clan because, he's a white guy.
Not Japanese.
Yeah. So in addition to his invitation, he also has to show them the dim mak, a.k.a. the death touch, which he does by smashing a brick, which impresses Lin and Jackson, but does not impress Chong Li. This is where we get the big baddie. He was the guy who was smashing ice blocks earlier, and he's played by Bolo Yeung, The Chinese Hercules.
I didn't know anything about this character until we see him in the movie. He is quite an intimidating figure.
That's why he was called the Chinese Hercules.
Yeah.
Bodybuilder, and he's very intimidating, and he sets a tone early on of, oh, this is the guy. Don't f with this guy.
Yeah,
This
you knew they were building to something here.
Oh, yeah.
This is where you start to picture some sort of like, for me, I often think of Rocky when I'm thinking of combat movies, and,
Sure.
I was starting to picture some like clearly this is going to be the sort of
He's the
ultimate
Chinese
fight.
Ivan Drago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in a way, that's what I was thinking. Yes, exactly.
So the military police who were looking for Frank Dux are also in Hong Kong, and they're trying to get info on the Kumite. And there's a Chinese inspector they talk to who seems very hesitant to help or give out information. And it seems to me like there's clearly a lot of power behind this tournament. Like it exists kind of in the shadows. And I kind of thought this inspector was like maybe trying to help protect that. Like maybe he's kind of in the pocket of like some kind of a mob. But his hesitation, this whole plot just goes nowhere.
I definitely felt that way too. Like Inspector Chang, I think was his name.
Yeah.
And he just straight up tells them nothing can be done. Right? And I think you're right. I think the people who run the Kumite have a level of sort of influence within that community or that area of Hong Kong and can get away with a lot. Now, they do bring him back, but he definitely caves pretty quickly in that second time around. And we can get into that more. But it was a strange sort of turn of face where he was no longer sort of protecting the people who were running it.
Oh, I thought for sure he was going to be like a dirty cop, and it was whatever. Because like if he wanted to bring this thing down, or why wouldn't he just be like, yes, great, let's do it? Like it seems strange that he was kind of very hesitant.
Well, I think that for my interpretation of it was there's actually a level of respect for the Kumite, even though it is something that happens like behind the scenes.
Okay,
And it's not
yeah.
really like it's hush hush. You're not supposed to talk about it. Even the people in like power or positions, roles like the police, respect the Kumite, and they want it to still continue until it proves a problem for them. And I think part of that turn, or maybe we'll get to it, I'll hold that for a little bit later, but I feel like there's a very specific reason why Inspector Chang turns in his way to sort of support that.
Okay, fair enough. I just thought this scene was setting up something that never ended up happening. But back at the hotel, we see some of the other guys in the Kumite getting a little aggressive with that reporter from earlier. Jean Claude Van Damme, he makes the save, but since they can't fight or they get thrown out of the Kumite, you can't have any bar fights, they make a bet. If Jean Claude Van Damme can snatch a coin from the guy's hand before he closes it, they're going to leave the reporter alone. And this was great. I love this scene.
So this was a good scene. The acting from the super stereotypical Middle Eastern guy, awful. He is so wooden and clearly putting on an awful accent. Like your hate for
Is this
young
another one of your-
JCVD is also like this one for me is pretty close. This guy sucks.
Is this then one of your theories if the guy isn't actually the like cultural background he's portraying?
So
you love calling guys out for this.
It's a problematic thing, right? You shouldn't be doing that. And I have a real strong sense that the person who was in this role, they even darkened his color of skin. And I was like, that is rough. And I mean, I know that there's a time and place, right? Like this is a time.
Whoa, no, there isn't.
Well,
Oh,
no. So
sorry,
I
you
mean,
back
like, yeah,
then. Yes,
like
yes, yes,
I'm not
yes,
saying
yeah.
that you should be doing this at different times.
No,
I'm
yeah.
saying that this is a
Of its era.
Of its era, right? And we've learned from that era. But
Now,
he's brutal. Now, the thing that he says about the woman, though, about the journalist, is pretty ridiculous. He says she's coming upstairs with me.
Yeah,
whether
he
she
just
wants
says it.
to or not. Like
Yeah.
this is such rapey overtones. It's so bad.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, you're in a testosterone. And again, not that this is okay, but like
Yeah.
of its era, you're in a high testosterone era. These guys are probably just used to like, I'm going to take what I want
Yeah.
because like I'm tough. And in most cases, no one can beat you. But not only does Jean Claude Van Damme take the coin out of the guy's hand before he can close it, he replaces it with a different coin, which is incredible because he does it and the guy's like, too slow. And I was like, really? And the dude opens his hand and it's not the same coin. It's like the other one was silver, this one's bronze.
Yes.
And everyone is just like, what?
Their minds are blown. You flash back to some of the training when he was getting his ass f***ing kicked.
Yeah.
And you can see where he got it from. So he saves the journalist and then immediately comments about her nice legs.
He tell you anything?
Told me I had nice legs.
He's right about that.
Well, and like 5 seconds later, they're walking and talking, and she
Yeah.
wants info with the Kumite, and he only agrees to give her information if she'll have dinner with him. So now he's kind of like backdoor, like
It is hilarious, yeah. So he saves her from like having to go upstairs with this one creepy guy, and then he starts becoming the creepy guy. At least she's showing some interest in JCVD. So you're like, okay, but it is such a 80s 90s kind of interpretation of how that would go.
He saves her, so now he gets her is how it works.
That's exactly kind of
God
what
damn
happens.
it.
Yeah.
So now they're going to have dinner later. In the meantime, we get just a gratuitous Jean Claude Van Damme split shot, which we have so many of these where it's him doing the splits for no
But
reason.
this is, I think, maybe the most well-known one, right? Like, this is the shot of
very
JCVD full split on chairs.
Complete 180 butterfly.
Yeah.
180 degrees, straight line.
Topless, like doing his sort of meditation and exercises. And if you ask me to think of him, it's that moment. And then I think there's a moment in another movie where he does it above 2 countertops so he doesn't get electrocuted.
Isn't that Cyborg?
No, that's not in Cyborg.
Or no, Time Cop. It's Time Cop.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's Time Cop. So, but this one definitely sticks out. If you go look up like a JCVD meme, you're gonna see this. Like, it's gonna be there. For
The
sure.
splits were kind of his thing, and it's incredibly impressive. He is just meditating hard right now. Jackson shows up. He's cranking some awful jokes, trying to talk to him.
And drinking a
It's-
beer.
Well, of course. This is how Jackson rolls. It's time for the Kumite.
Yeah.
He's trying to get him on the bus for the Kumite. We see Lynn just decked out in an amazing white tracksuit. Oh, my God. I don't know how much that tracksuit would have cost in the 80s. I would pay a fortune for it now. It's incredible. I love it. We get the opening ceremonies of the Kumite. The master of ceremonies kind of gives us some more backstory on the Kumite's history, and now it's fight time. So we learn there are 3 ways to win: knockout, submission, or you throw the fucker right off the runway.
I really like this. This is cool, building this sort of tension, getting almost into the like Mortal Kombat. Like, you get
Very
that
much
feeling,
so.
right?
Yeah.
It's starting to come. What I didn't understand was why were all the instructions and everything that came with it in English? I was kind of pissed off. I was
Come on,
like,
man. You know why. You know why.
well, I know why, but I feel like they could have made us read for at least 1 minute of the film, and I would have appreciated it better.
I would have done it for sure, but I think they just went the shorter route, which is they're probably filming this in the States. I mean, who knows if those guys actually spoke Chinese or whatever. Like, just,
Yeah, but if we're having the best kumite, the biggest kumite ever, the amazing like happening in Hong Kong, the organizers who don't speak like almost at all other than this moment should have spoken in f***ing Chinese.
Well, especially considering no North American has ever won, you get the impression that it's usually a Chinese guy winning, and so that should be
this is
kind
an
of the way
Asian
it goes.
tournament. This isn't
There's
something
some cultural pride here for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed weird.
Now, this is where, and God help me, you know I love this, we get the title finally at about almost about 37 minutes into this movie, because during these fight clips, a punch bloodies someone. Jackson leans over to Jean Claude Van Damme and says, "That's why they call this thing Bloodsport, kid." I'm like, "Oh yes, please."
I put some exclamation marks in your name down in my notes for that moment. I was like, this is
Every
probably
time.
getting a +1 from Cooper.
Check
right
it
here.
off.
I also noticed that this became a big betting thing. So
yeah.
that sort of pulls in some of your ideas around maybe the police or others are involved in this, or there might be other things back there.
Definitely. So speaking of Jackson, he's fighting next. He takes some punishment and then just clubs his opponent over the head, and the fight is over. And then he calls out Chong Li and then goes back to his seat. Jean-Claude Van Damme is like, "Oh, good job," even though it clearly wasn't. Like, that was a terrible fight strategy. He just gets punched 17 times and just like bonks someone in the head and calls it a day.
It was funny, yeah. So it was in the very first fight that we get the Bloodsport reference, and then Ray's in the second fight. He's like drinking a beer right after. It is so comical, his character. But why does he point out Chong Li? He knows.
Well, you know why.
Yeah,
because
I know.
he is going to be, keeping the Rocky IV metaphor
Yeah.
going, he's going to be the Apollo Creed who goes out there and gets slaughtered by fucking Chong Li.
This was the moment that I immediately drew to there. I actually wrote it in my
course.
notes as well. I was like, oh, Ray is going to die, and then Jean-Claude's going to revenge here. And I was like, this is how this is going to go. Because I didn't remember this movie. Like, I didn't have any of that in there.
But it's so, you can see it coming a mile away. God.
Oh,
and
God,
so
yes.
Chong Li is next. He fights next. He's an absolute fucking beast. And we're told in the course of his fight that he kicked a guy in the throat and then watched him die. Now, he wins fast, but not as fast as Frank Dux. Frank Dux is facing off against his buddy from the fucking coin bet.
Insane, yeah.
And it does not go well for that guy.
World record. He fucking
Yeah.
kicks him in the face and knocks out his gold tooth.
Frank takes him down in about 7 seconds. It's a new world record. And some kid gets a nice souvenir. He grabs the tooth kind of off the mat. And then we get another montage. We're back into the montage. We get some more clips, different fighters, different styles. And what a song we get here. The song is called Fight to Survive.
Yes.
And they're just chanting Kumite, Kumite, Kumite over and over again. My God.
So throughout the fights, the music is really good. You're getting like solid fight music. It's straight out of like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. It's super exciting. And then I laughed so hard when this fucking amazing Fight to Survive 80s ballad Kumite comes on.
It is amazing. It's an amazing song.
Oh, yes. And in the montage, there's absolutely no close fights. Like, everyone is getting their ass kicked. They're sort of pushing the story forward by showing us some of the other fights. And it's just a domination. Clearly, there's like 4 or 5 fighters who are way better than everyone else.
And surprise, they're the ones we saw in that montage at the beginning.
Yeah, they're getting us in there.
But as this is going on, we know where we're headed. We know exactly where this movie's headed. Chong Li's going to take out Jackson. He's going to fight Frank Dux at the end of this tournament. They're just laying this out for us. This is a fucking paint by numbers. Like, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. And you know what? I watching this movie, and even as a kid watching these movies, you didn't want there to be any doubt. You wanted them to lay it out for you. You just knew. They're just building this up exactly the way they should. And I love them for it. I think this is good stuff.
Yeah, we get that. And I think right after this montage is where we go back to those military police, right?
Yeah, oh my God. And we get a little fish out of water comedy here. They're trying to eat with the chopsticks. They're not good at it. Yeah. Forrest Whitaker can't fucking grab one of those chicken pieces to save his fucking life. Oh, man.
And this is where...
Inspector Chan.
We go back to Inspector Chan, right? And this is where he dimes out Duke and lets those military police know where this tournament's happening.
So I still in my head thought this was like he's still involved in kind of the behind the scenes dirty business of the Kumite. I thought he was tipping them off where to find him to get him out of the Kumite.
So that was my interpretation of it too. And I still think that's why it happened, right? Like, I still think he wanted Chong Li to win. He doesn't want someone to pose a risk to Chong Li's victory.
Yeah.
So he wants the military police to take Duke out of there because the tournament's still going to continue. Like, these military police aren't going to shut down the Kumite. They're just going to get their man out of there, which really didn't make sense to me throughout the entire film. Like, I didn't understand why he was so important to them that he couldn't fight in this tournament.
Well,
like,
when they go, like, they go to find him exactly where Inspector Chan said he was. And he says, I'm happy to go back. I'll go back in 2 days when the tournament's over. And that's not good enough for them. Like, to your point, why couldn't they be like, all right, cool, 2 days? Like, they think he's going to die out there?
I guess
mean,
that's
maybe.
what they weren't willing to risk, right? He was such a weapon to them that they weren't willing to risk him to die in this Kumite tournament. That part to me was the part of this movie that I struggled with the most. I didn't understand that sort of kind of motivation. I guess it added to the problems of the things that we're facing our like lead character.
Yeah, his obstacles. Yeah.
But it just seems sort of shallow to me.
Yeah, I hear you. And so they're going to want to bring him back. He doesn't want to go. They pull tasers on him. They're just carrying these giant like gun-style tasers. But then Jackson, who I think was a former football player, he just comes in with like a textbook tackle, takes them both out, buys Dukes a little bit, like some time, gets him a head start. And we get a little foot race through the streets of Hong Kong there. He loses them when he runs across some boats and they both fall in the water, which is just, it was pretty fun. I like that.
There was this hilarious 80s song going on. The chase scene was super funny, laughable. They do fall in the water and they have like a thing with them. When Ray helps them get away, he tackles them and he says,
I ain't your pal, face.
Which is a pretty classy line. I like that one. The tasers looked insane. They looked like something out of an old school cartoon. They were just huge.
Yeah, they're big.
Right? Like,
but that was the 80s.
Kill someone, yeah. One thing about the chase that kept bothering me was JCVD would get like so far ahead and then he would stop and wait until they were going to catch up to that. I was like, come on, what are you doing? But he eventually gets away when they fall in the water, and then we cut to
date night.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reporter, she wants him to let her in.
Oh my God. I just wrote down me is what she really wanted. Because that is where she was headed.
Well, Frank tells her there are strict rules about the Kumite. She asks about the military police who are after him. But then she quickly just abandons her whole line of questioning and the whole story she's there reporting for just so they can go upstairs and bang.
Yeah, she wanted him to be her way in, but I guess his charm was so much that like one excuse or one sort of thing from him and they're fucking.
The next morning, we get you know exactly what I'm gonna say. We get just a gratuitous shot of Jean Claude Van Damme like pulling up his fucking gitch. He's got these tight red briefs, and we get this quick shot in profile. And okay, I have to ask you this: is he stuffing? So his looks fucking massive, enormous. This side profile, I'm like,
that's hilarious. I didn't actually like notice the size as much as his ass. Like, I felt like there was more emphasis on his ass because he definitely shows straight ass. It was one of those where, like, normally you'd watch an action movie and you'd see, like, a naked woman, where instead they show you JCVD, right?
The roles are reversed in that sense, but he does a brief turn, and you get a low profile.
You just notice
a grapefruit down there or something. It's just a cannon. I had to I was like stunned. The next morning, or I guess later that night, whatever. At some point, he leaves for the Kumite, but she follows him. So maybe she's a better reporter than kind of we're giving her credit for here, because maybe this was her plan. It was she'll lower his guard, wait for him to leave, knowing that the next morning he's got to go to the Kumite, and then she just tracks him there. Sure enough, she's in there. And after a bit of comedy from Jackson, he tries the brick trick that Jean Claude Van Damme did, but he kind of biffs it. So instead, he just smashes it on his head. And Jean Claude Van Damme with just a terrible line here. I hope we don't butt heads. That's awful. It's real bad.
That's real bad. It's interesting. I like when we come back for the next day of the Kumite, we notice that they're sort of shrinking up the ring a little bit.
Yep.
There's some changes, and you can tell that things are ramping up. The fighter expressions as they are getting warmed up for this next day of fighting was so laughable.
Yeah, we get some great facial expressions.
Oh my God. I was just loving that part of it.
Well, you're also loving the fact that we go right back to another montage.
Of course.
That's good to say. Yeah,
and we start setting up further setting up a Ray versus Chong Li fight here.
Yeah, I'll say. Well, Chong Li cripples a dude just straight up because we see bone come through the skin.
Yeah.
Oh my God. JCVD fights some jacked guy. This guy points at him. He taunts. He flexes. And then Jean Claude Van Damme just 2 kicks him off the fucking runway for the win. Like, this fight lasts almost, I feel like it must have been less time than the last one.
Yeah, there's some quick ones. I really enjoyed his next fight more, I think, when JCVD has to fight the sumo.
Oh, yeah. Well, so this guy gets Jean Claude Van Damme like in a splits position, but then he drags him along the mat, which has no effect because Jean Claude Van Damme is the master of the splits. In fact, when that dude charges him, he does the splits again and punches him right in the dick.
So I had to stop the DVD. I was laughing so hard because the fucking sumo was kind of tossing him around pretty hard.
A little bit, yeah.
He had him in a bear hug. He was putting some damage on him. JCVD gave him a headbutt, which sort of softened him up a little bit. But it was this, like, he uses that move that he used to crush the bricks, the death touch.
Straight dick shot.
Straight in his cock. And, and at first you're like, oh, it's not going to do anything. But in the end,
it drops him like a stone.
It drops him down like a stone. I gave the movie a +1 enjoyable just for that scene. I wrote it right down on this page.
Incredible dick shot.
Yeah, the best dick shot.
Well, we see here, perhaps because of the gratuitous dick shots, same way he gained favor with you, he's gaining favor with this crowd. We're getting some chance for kind of like Frank Dux.
Dukes.
But now, though, we knew it was coming. We get Jackson against Chong Li.
Yeah, and Chong Li's mad because of the Dukes cheers. Like,
he doesn't like
he's
it.
revved up hard here.
It's being upstaged by some fucking North American guy.
Yeah.
Now, ahead of this fight, Frank tells Jackson to go for the gut. Chong Li's weak in the gut. Jackson does his own thing, though. He ignores it completely. But his own thing's kind of working, and he knocks Chong Li down. He bloodies him. But for some inexplicable reason, he doesn't finish him off.
Yeah.
He's just jumping up and down, saying his own name. It's like he's trying to get the crowd to chant his own name. He's just like, Jackson, Jackson, Jackson.
And this is where the Rocky syndrome is going to come true right here. Like, we're about to see.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chong Li gets up and just destroys him.
Yeah, I'm like, he's fucking dead.
And sure enough, Jean Claude Van Damme is Rocky in the Rocky 4 spot where he like yells, "No, stop!" And then no was pretty fucking funny.
Yeah, it wasn't well executed, that's for sure. But this is where, like when we started watching the early Arnold movies, he's known for more his physical aspects than his delivery of lines.
I have to disagree with you in one point there because Schwarzenegger, once he got established, he was great with those one-liners.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm saying this is early in Jean-Claude's career.
I don't know if Van Damme ever got there though with the one-liners. I don't think that's the same thing.
Okay, you might be right. He never had the same comic delivery, I think, as
No,
Arnold,
definitely
for sure.
not. No. Anyway, Chong Li stomps Jackson's head, taunts Frank Dux with Jackson's bandana.
Yeah, steals it off his head and taunts him like.
And at this point, the crowd is firmly for Chong Li.
Yeah,
they might have been on Frank Dux for a minute, but now they are chanting Chong Li, Chong Li, Chong Li. Turns out Jackson's not dead, so it's not a full Rocky 4. He's not quite dead.
I was relieved. I was happy. I don't want Ray to die.
No, you know what? He's a lovable goofball.
He was the comic relief. It was sort of a hilarious portrayal of Americans.
He's like a fun caveman.
Yeah.
But Doctor says he'll be okay. It must be that hard head he has.
Head like a rock.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where Jean Claude Van Damme swears revenge. And the reporter's totally against it.
Yeah,
She's
Jenny's
like, "Get the
pissed.
fuck out of here." Yeah. We get this big dramatic scene where he tries to make her understand why he's doing this.
Why did you become a reporter?
My father was a reporter. I was a good writer. It seemed like the right thing for me to do.
And you want to be the best reporter you can be, right?
Yes, that's right.
Well, I'm just trying to be the best I can be.
This is him, just Jean Claude Van Damme going for the Oscar.
I just wrote down so
Terrible.
many fake feelings. That was exactly what I saw in this one.
God, you could just see the
Yeah.
acting happening.
And then the better acting comes immediately after from our friend Victor.
Well, she storms out though. The girl
Yeah,
storms
Jenny's
out.
gone. Yeah, she's pissed.
And yeah, Lena's like, forget the girl. Eyes on the prize. We got to win this Kumite. Right?
Yeah, Victor's throwing down the Oscar performance in this movie.
He must have put a little money down on JCVD, right?
You would think so, based on how much he wants him to win, or maybe
Yeah, I
he
feel
gets
like he's
paid
got a
more
personal
if
stake.
one of the people
Oh.
he's training,
Like a bonus.
because he's putting it in hard. He's definitely trying to motivate JCVD right here.
Yeah, I believe it. After this, though, the reporter goes to the police. She can't abide this anymore.
She's in love with him. He can't die.
Yeah, she's trying to get the Kumite shut down before someone else gets hurt.
They've been together for one night.
Yeah, and again, at this point, I'm still like, there's some kind of conspiracy here. She's gonna end up disappearing because of this. Like in my mind, I wrote down like, I'm not sure that's a good idea. None of this ever becomes a thing. I don't know if
Yeah.
we're making this up in our heads, like expecting a plot that wasn't there. But I
Yeah.
swear in that
You
scene,
think there
the
should have been
inspector-
more?
don't
I
know.
really think the only thing the inspector was trying to do was to get Dukes out so Chong Li wouldn't have competition. I feel like the inspector threw a bet on Chong Li.
That's very possible.
Right?
Who
Like
knows?
I
Maybe
feel like
everyone's
that's where
betting
they
on
were.
this.
After she goes to the,
Oh my God.
we get the bus scene.
This is the introspective montage.
Yes, that's it on the bus, right?
Holy
oh my
Lord.
Ugh.
We get all these flashbacks, including one from like 5 minutes ago.
It has, and this is another song I think written for the movie.
Yes.
And
Do you know the name of the song?
I don't. Do you
I'll
know?
tell you. It's so appropriate.
What is it?
The name of this song is On My Own / Alone.
And it is an amazingly appropriate 80s ballad. Like I sat there just singing along and loving this moment while going through JCVD's turmoil. It was
This
amazing.
is a real ballad. You called the earlier song a ballad, which kind of is. This is a straight up
The other one
ballad.
is the first one was more of like a power ballad rock
Yeah.
song, like we were getting into those kind of 80s, but this is just a straight up like wallowing, I'm sad ballad. And
Oh,
it's
God
great.
damn it. I was laughing the whole time because it's it's so on the nose that it's unbelievable.
I wrote down, is this written for the movie? And then I had to look it up later. Ooh, yes.
We also get more splits in this montage. For some reason, he's doing I don't know why.
Well, you have to, right? You have to show JCVD doing the splits because it is his best move.
That's how he goes to his relaxing emotional place, is by doing more splits.
But I love this. So the music's great. We get this montage. And then where does he end up?
The next day, Frank Dux is walking to the tournament, and the cops are waiting. We got a little alley ambush here, but he quickly dispatches them, and then he gets the drop on the military police. And just in time, too, because they're about ready to call his fight a forfeit. He's not in the building for the Kumite. They're going
Yeah.
to call it. But
Everything, he is against all odds. I was actually hoping for a third ballad right here. I was hoping that, that it would be called Against All Odds and it would start playing at this very moment as he overcomes everything to get to the ring just in time.
That's pretty funny. So I think this is the semifinals. His opponent cheap shots him to start, and then they're just trading kicks back and forth. It's like just like 12 kicks, one after the other, just literally. But eventually the other guy just can't take it anymore, and he drops. And that's pretty much it.
And then we get the other semifinal.
Well, it's Chong Li, and he just rolls. He rolls through this matchup.
Yeah, so this one is pretty intense. Like, Chong Li is destroying a much smaller guy. The other guy puts a bit of damage on Chong Li early, but it's clearly just not a physical comparable match. And once the other guy is out, Chong Li fucking snaps his neck.
Oh, big time. It's a straight up murder.
He murders
it's a
him.
legit murder.
He murders him on the mat, and it's interesting because everyone in the stadium, including the organizers and everything, they all get up and turn their back.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so after it happens, there's no cheering. They're showing him that moment of that is beyond what you should be doing.
You know who doesn't care, though? Chong Li, because he celebrates. You see the way he celebrates?
Yeah, he's jumping up and
Pumping
down.
his arms up and
Yeah.
down in his celebration. It's so strange.
And he goes and he points, or I think he points
does.
at
Oh,
JCVD,
he-
right? Yeah,
he
he's
tells
just
him.
saying, like, this is your next. Like,
He
this
literally
is-
says to me, "You are next."
This is a pure intimidation move, clearly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you're right. That's actually a great meme. I've had people sending that one to me lately.
You are next.
And his expressions are like just insane. I was about to use the word ridiculous, but I pulled back. He has just the most over-exaggerated expressions after he murders this man, and he's throwing it out at him.
And sure enough, Frank Dux is next. This is it. We are in the finals. We see tons of money changing hands. There's bets being made. As we're getting ready, we see Chong Li's corner man slip something into his trunks, and I'm like, it looked like a pill. I didn't know what it was.
I thought he threw a mint in his fucking trunks. So I was like,
I thought it was a pill, and I was like, I cannot imagine this guy would need more steroids. We also see that he's got Jackson's bandana tied around his leg as a little you to Frank Dux. And to really drive it home, he fucking reminds him and just like points at it.
They're doing a good job of setting him up as the final big bad. Like, you fucking hate Chong Li.
Well, he's a real dick. You see him kill a guy. You see him cripple a guy. You see him taunt JCVD.
Yeah, they did a good
friend.
job. Like, I have to credit them definitely for that, because I want Chong Li to go down hard. He cannot take out JCVD, right?
Was there ever a doubt in your mind? Come on. The fight's on. They are trading shots to start, and Chong Li kind of gets the advantage. He throws him around a little bit, but as the music picks up, so does Frank's performance. And in my mind, I'm like, it's like a chicken egg thing. Like, is the music picking up because performance, or can he actually hear the music? Like, is this like
it's all actually just coming from his head?
Like in South Park where Randy Marsh is fighting those dudes and he's singing "You're the best around."
Exactly.
I wrote it out. I was like, which of this is causing which thing? Is his fighting causing, or is the music causing his fighting?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh man. So Chong Li is down. He crushes up that kind of tablet, the pill he was handed earlier. I think it's salt.
It's a blind powder.
Whatever kind of, he throws it in Frank Dux' eyes. He's blind and he starts taking some damage. Now Chong Li's really feeling himself here, but what he doesn't know is that Frank Dux has extensive blindfold training, which he fortunately,
after he starts taking a heavy beating, he starts remembering the training where he just got beat to like shit for months and months. And so he decides, okay, I need to start meditating and get control of shit.
Wait, are you gonna talk about his facial expressions?
And the scream?
His facial expressions are out of control.
He looks like Frankenstein's monster to me. He goes through that moment where he just like almost comes to life like a monster getting electricity through him.
Shaking and he's like all veiny. Oh
and
my
I
God.
think this is maybe, other than the splits, this is the most famous moment for JCVD.
Just the
ever.
rage, the guttural
the blood
scream.
coming out of his eyebrow, right? Or is it mouth, side of his mouth or his eyebrow? And he just lets out that insane scream.
And he remembers all his training, and Chong Li goes to attack, but Frank catches his arm and starts just kicking his ass based only on sound.
Yes. He doesn't need sight. He is fucking a master, right?
Now he swings 4 straight roundhouse kicks that miss. Then we get a split jump because once again he's got to work the splits in. But then several spinning roundhouse kicks connect and Chong Li is down. But Frank doesn't want the knockout. He wants the submission.
Is he choking him at this
He
point?
yells at him to submit.
Yeah,
and
I do
sure
love
enough,
this. Yeah.
Chong Li does. Frank Dux takes back the bandana. He wins. And surprise, he earns a katana. They bring him a sword as his trophy for winning this tournament. We get a very tender hospital scene where Jean Claude Van Damme gives Jackson a little kiss and tells him he loves him. Then it's off to the airport and we're out, but not before we get a freeze frame. Freeze frame.
I got a couple things to say. The fighting after he went blind looked a lot to me like skating ice dance. It was so well choreographed that I felt like there was ice dancing. But I love the spin kick to win, and then him screaming, say it, right? Getting him.
Oh, he wants it. He wants that submission.
When we get to that scene of them in the hospital, I love that we find Ray drinking a beer in his fucking hospital bed, because that's hilarious.
I like to imagine that Frank Dux brought him that beer. He's not going to get a beer in
and
the
this fits with what I'm going to say right now. The romance in this movie, the real romance.
Oh, come on. Don't say it.
Is Frank and Ray. It is the real romance that came out of this movie. I believe they're in love. And this is this is how I felt at the end of the movie. I felt Frank and Ray were really the romance. That reporter woman, she's nothing, right?
Well, I mean, Frank leaves her on the fucking tarmac at the airport, cold turkey. Just gives her a little wave. He's like, out of there.
And then we get the freeze frame into another amazing 80s song.
True.
So,
God,
I mean,
the soundtrack is on point for this.
Oh my God. It's so good. It hit all of the right notes for me in terms of soundtrack.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to hear your ratings for this movie. For anyone who has not tuned in before, the way this works, we rate the movie 2 times. We give it a 1 to 10 for how bad it is. We give it a 1 to 10 for how enjoyable it is. And the ultimate goal that we've only ever achieved one time is to have a 10 out of 10 bad, 10 out of 10 enjoyable, or as we call it, the Crit 20.
Okay.
So this is the point where we rate this thing, and I will tell you, I can't give this a 10 out of 10 because
For which? Sorry.
for how bad it is.
Oh, yeah.
As
You
much
can't.
as this
There's no way
movie
you
is
can
kind
call
of
it a 10
a paint by numbers 80s action movie, it's
Yeah.
not like poorly made. They check all the boxes. They're doing all the right things. I'm only giving this a 7 out of 10 for how bad it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it was only that section of child acting, it would be like an 11 out
I was
of 10.
gonna-
Yeah. we would blow past our markers because I know how you feel about that.
On a scale of 1 to
I don't know what's
that
happening.
kid's
today.
terrible.
He is awful, but you cannot say that.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Okay, I would say for me, for bad, I had a lot of trouble with the acting. The over-top expressions were just a lot. I think that somewhat adds to the enjoyability of a bad movie, but it was a lot. I also thought it was incredibly predictable. So, I mean...
Oh, of course.
Like
We've
that
already
is,
talked about that.
that's
Yeah.
the problem I had for it. So I gave it a 7 bad as well.
Oh, that's not that bad.
Yeah, so
That's-
no, it's
yeah,
not. It's
no,
not horrible. It's not a horrible movie.
It's not a
clearly.
bad movie.
This is not going to make the Hall of Fame because it's too
Never.
good, too well known a movie.
It is. Now, how enjoyable though?
This one was a challenge for me to rate for enjoyability. This is the first time that I remember watching it through. Huge fan of martial arts films. Huge fan of Jean Claude Van Damme. So I thought immediately this was a 10 out of 10, right? Like I thought going in, that's where we were going to sit.
I would have no argument if you named it a 10.
Which is fair, right? And I love the music. I love the action. I found that the story moved a little slow, and I felt that the part with the like military police was just completely unnecessary and annoying to me.
Yeah, that really didn't go anywhere. Now that I think about it, that was a really kind of a giant waste of time.
It took away from me. So-
Padding.
Padding. Oh no, is this the theory? So I was actually going to give it an 8, but because I love that fucking dick punch so much, it's definitely a 9 for me.
I also gave it a 9. The only thing about this movie that I didn't like, you mentioned, it's very predictable, a clear delineation of what's going to happen to everyone. We called it from the jump. We were absolutely right. The kid is so fucking bad at acting. Those flashback scenes are so brutal.
The flashbacks
I
are
just
so
thought-
bad you
oh
took
my
away
God.
a point of enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm like, this kid's awful. He's awful.
I really want to find out what he's done. I think I'm going to make it a point to see what's happened to this
yes,
one.
let's search him. If he's had a long storied career, good for you overcoming what must have been
If he's had a long storied career,
huge obstacles.
I think you need to chug a beer in our next cast.
You know what? If
All
that
right.
kid has acted one more day in his life beyond Bloodsport, I will absolutely chug a beer at the beginning of our next episode because that kid is fucking awful. He should have been, if he wasn't American, they should have deported him after this movie. He's fucking trash. It's a super enjoyable movie. Van Damme is just great. My only bad thing is the kid. I was going to give it an 8 also, but the freeze frame, I automatically give it a point for a freeze frame ending.
Wow.
I'm up to 9 as
So
well.
it's going to be an 8 from both of us. Wow.
No, it's a 9 from both of us.
Well, it is now, but it would have
Yeah.
been if it. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
No, a lot of fun. You can't go wrong with Bloodsport.
Yeah.
So happy that we watched this and so happy that we're talking about it here. And this beer, I mean, I love this beer. It's nice and light. It's crushable. I'm on my 3rd one right now in the course of us filming this episode.
Yeah, I took
Not
down
filming.
2. I'm about to get another one. I definitely really enjoyed Blood Brothers. Well, I'm not normally a Pilsner Lager person, but I found it super smooth, really clean. I love the amber color, and the soup, like the malty caramel flavor is delicious.
And now we're going to have a picture on our social media of the beer because one of our requests that we got from social media followers was we want more beer porn.
Yeah, so we are going to start trying to provide more beer porn. We'll take a picture of both our beers we're drinking and
Well, we already did with our bonus episode, but we did it again for this one, and we'll keep it up for the next little while.
I kind of think of this beer as like a good steam whistle.
Ooh, shots fired
I
at
know,
the
and I'm
fine
sorry.
people at Steam Whistle.
And that was like one of our first, if not
It was
our
our-
first. They were
literally our
very
first
beer.
episode.
And I feel bad. Steam Whistle is not a bad beer, but definitely Blood Brothers does it better.
Blood Brothers, strongly recommend. If you're ever in Toronto, if you're ever in Ontario and you can order it, get on there because Blood Brothers is delicious. Good stuff. And I feel like this episode was a lot of fun. I had a good time with it. I'm glad we're back.
Yes, me too.
Next week, we're going to be watching just an 80s horror. I don't want to call it a masterpiece. This is a movie that really did not do that well at the box office, but it's a lot of fun.
I'm
and
intrigued. What is it?
It's Night of the Creeps.
Oh, I don't know anything about this.
I'm not surprised because this movie, like, it's so much an 80s movie. I think you're going to have a good time. Hopefully everyone else does too. You join us again next week. Thank you so much for listening. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the BMB Podcast.
If you have any suggestions, please send them over to us at thebmbpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, and until next time, I'm Cooper.
And I'm Nolan.
We'll see you next week on Bad Movies and Beer.
Keep it kicking.
The true story of the ultimate champion.